Obama not to endorse him in the race for the White House. This comes after the former vice president officially announced his third attempt at running for president. Today, he joins a crowded field of Democratic hopefuls, and if he can beat out the competition, Biden would have the most extensive resume of public service held by any president entering office. So, who's Joe Biden, in case you have to ask that question? Most Americans don't. But to start with, he was born on November 20th, 1942. So it makes him 76 years old today, 78 years old on the next presidential inauguration day. So get this, if he becomes elected, he would be the oldest president in U.S. history. Now, we know Joe Biden served as the 47th vice president to the United States, 2 full terms under President Barack Obama from 2009 to 2017. But before that, he served as the U.S. Senator from Delaware from 1973 to 2009, nearly 4 decades, making him the state's longest-serving senator. Biden's run for the White House is an effort that spanned more than 30 years. He ran once back in 1988, then again 20 years later in 2008 in the election that Barack Obama ended up winning. Fast forward to today, where the former VP is stepping his feet into a highly contentious race where policy has come front and center for Democrats, and Biden has quite the resume in terms of policy. In 1986, he introduced Congress's first ever climate bill in the Senate. In 1993, he introduced the Violence Against Women's Act, just to name a couple of things he's done. But as a candidate who has been involved in politics for more than 40 years, his stances on many issues have evolved over time. He also championed marriage equality for same-sex couples during his time in the Obama administration. In 2012, he expressed his support for LGBT rights on national television. 3 days later, President Obama did the same. But like most candidates, Biden has a history of controversy, and he'll likely hear about it from his opponents, like the recent allegations from women who say Biden made physical contact that they felt was inappropriate. His response to that was, quote, "It was never my intention." There's also renewed criticism of his handling of Anita Hill's allegations against Clarence Thomas, whose confirmation hearing Biden was in charge of. Biden's response to that was, quote, "I wish I could have done something."
Joining us now, New York Times chief Washington correspondent, and this is what's important, Carl Hulse, who has been covering Joe Biden for about 25 years. NBC national political correspondent Steve Kornacki with us, and NBC News White House correspondent Kelly O'Donnell, who is celebrating her 25th year here at NBC. Congratulations, Kelly.
Thank
Carl,
you.
I must go to you first. Joe Biden, as Ali said, has been in politics for over 40 years. You've covered him for over 25. So you could get
longer, actually.
You could get into when he ran a red light into 1986. It's a positive in terms of how prepared Joe Biden is, but could it turn out to be a negative as it was for Hillary Clinton? She had been in the public eye for so long. There was so much to scrutinize, and that was scrutinized. And President Trump basically, in many ways, got a free pass, being somebody who came from the outside. And even now, in terms of conduct, everything's sort of been thrown out the window for him.
Right. You know, you have to remember one of the reasons that Democrats thought Barack Obama would be such a strong candidate in 2008, so soon after arriving in Washington, was that he had no record. Tom Daschle told him at the time, run now before you have a record. Joe Biden has the big record, which is a big advantage for him in some ways, but it's also a disadvantage. And you have to remember, and as Kelly certainly knows, Joe Biden has said a lot of words over the years, and every one of those words is now going to be parsed. I think, obviously, the Clarence Thomas confirmation hearing, which Biden himself admits he did a bad job at, but I think people were unhappy with his recent announcement where he said, I wish I could have done more. I mean, that struck some people as off because at the time he was chairman of the committee. He's the person who could have done more. I think that he's going to face some criticism of his anti-crime bill. And there's another one that people don't think about very much. His senator from Delaware, Delaware. He represented big credit card banks that were in Delaware for tax reasons. And those people are going to, if you look at Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, the banking, they make an enemy of the banks, and we'll see how Vice President Biden handles that. I think the big thing for Joe Biden is how much can he make his record be about when he was Obama Biden as opposed to Chairman Biden, and that's going to be the test for him. And I think you will hear the word evolved a lot in the next few weeks about Joe Biden, that he's evolved in a lot of these areas.
But Kelly, isn't that exactly how President Trump gets a free pass? Joe Biden is going to have Joe Biden has said many words, and to Carl's point, all of those words will now be scrutinized 24 hours a day.
By a whole lot of other Democrats, too.
By 16 other Democrats. And President Trump gets to have it's Trump being Trump.
If there's a Trump prism that can be put on top of the Joe Biden era of 2020, then that'll be interesting to watch, because the many things that he has said that would be in the gaffe department or on policy that might be out of step with the current moment, a lot of that is out there. And there's been Oppo research done on Joe Biden as a VP pick in the Obama era, as a candidate himself. And there's plenty to unearth. The question will be, in part, is the public's attention focused on those old quotes, those trouble spots, or more focused on the future? Elections are supposed to be about the future and ideas going forward. And can this Joe Biden kind of throw off some of the weight of those past mistakes or a propensity to say things that get him in trouble, perhaps in kind of like the way President Trump seems to throw it aside? It'll be a test of this new era.
You had said that Joe Biden has already apologized. President Trump apologizes for nothing and has never admitted a gaffe.
So let's bring Steve into this. Steve, Joe Biden comes into the race. I don't know. You probably know more about this than I do. How often does somebody come into the race later than 16 or 17 candidates and rocket right to the top, making him the lightning rod for this conversation we're just having? Donald Trump doesn't have to do the dirty work here. He actually welcomed Joe Biden into the race because he knows there are 16 other people who will do the dirty work for him in parsing everything Joe Biden's ever done or said.
Yeah, I mean, look, precedents for a 16-plus candidate field. There's the Republican field in 2016, obviously, that Trump came through. Otherwise, maybe you go back to 1976 when Jimmy Carter came up on the Democratic side. But politics, the entire process was much different back then. In terms of Biden and where he stands coming into this race, yes, top of the polls right now. This is Monmouth. This is a national poll this week. We've seen this in a lot of other polls. Biden out in front. He's the front runner, but not an overwhelming front runner. And there are some interesting divides that are already presenting themselves with Joe Biden. One, ideological. Look, among folks who call themselves liberals in the Democratic Party right now, he's running at 17%, not even first place. Check out, though, people who say they're a moderate or a conservative. Look at that Biden support, more than doubles from 17 up to 36%. That's where he's got the heart of his support right now ideologically. How about age? You see Sanders is cleaning up under 50, the younger side of the party, the older side 50 plus. Biden in first. There have been other polls showing him doing even better 50 plus. There's been an age divide we've seen in the early polling. And there's been also this question of Joe Biden, can he bring in non-white voters? Can he bring in black voters in South Carolina, for instance? So is he among white voters? Biden out.
May I ask you a quick question there?
Yeah.
There are some people who would say that's not the thing that's actually going to win the election. As interesting as it is and as big a deal as it is, those voters are not going to vote Democrat. They're not going to vote Republican.
Yeah, but you've got to get them to vote.
Can Joe Biden bring in white working class voters who abandon the Democratic Party?
So that's the right. Two different questions with Biden. What I'm giving you here is, can Joe Biden break through this field of 16, 17 and win the nomination? If he does win the nomination, then the question becomes.
Right, got it.
And I think the question there, it's real simple. I think everybody who watched election night 2016 remembers Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. The combined margin there for Trump in those states was 77,000 votes.
Right.
Biden wants every Democrat thinking, hey, you put Biden, you're not getting those 77,000 back.
Yeah, that's Joe's jam. It wasn't Hillary Clinton's. Carl, Ali said something interesting. Donald Trump welcomes Joe Biden because he knows 16 other people that are Democrats are going to chip away at him. If you're Nancy Pelosi and you're looking at this list, this massive list of candidates, is it a problem for you knowing that they're all about to feed on one another while Republicans, whether they like them or not, are sort of silently standing with and behind President Trump?
Well, you know, that's politics. They're going to come after you. And I think for Biden, the test is whether he can, you know, defend himself and do a good job. I actually thought the video today was very smart, very well done. It kind of went at the one issue that unites all Democrats. We have to defeat Donald Trump. And I've been talking to a lot of his ex-colleagues over the past 2 weeks or so, and they're all like, you know what, Joe's got some problems, but we think he might be the best person. And so they're going to have to wade through this. I do think the test for the vice president is going to be, the video is one thing, it was really nicely done, but what's he going to do when he has to engage directly, be on stage, answer questions? We're going to have to see that going forward, and how he responds to what I'm sure is going to be criticism. I think he probably loved the Trump criticism, because it makes him, it's like, whoa, Trump thinks I'm the guy, so let's convince everybody else I am the guy and can take him on.
Welcome back to Velshi and Rule live in Washington, D.C. According to the latest polls, Joe Biden enters the Democratic campaign for president as